Okay, so this should just be a relatively quick demo, unless we decide to fall into a rabbit hole or something of the config ignore module. So we're May 2021 right now. I'll be doing this on a Drupal 9 site, 9.1.8, I believe. Let's take a look just to be sure. Da, 9.1.6. What's my one error? Rebuild access, so that's fine. All right, so what's the deal with config ignore? Config ignore allows you to specify configurations that you do not want to participate in config export or config import. In other words, it basically allows you to use a configuration system with a subset of config. Now, you do have to be careful of this every now and then because there could be dependencies that, if you ignore something that's a dependency of something else and it changes, you could have issues doing imports or exports in the future. So I don't use this one super often, but I will use this one every now and then. And I did want to mention, if you have it enabled as part of your configuration, you can always disable it in some environments with a little snippet in your settings.php file. So a common use case for this is with blocks. So what I did before I started this recording was I exported the config, and then I committed it to Git. So if I do another export, we should be clean. So let me just confirm that. There we go. Okay, so it's identical, so there's nothing new to export. So what happens with blocks a lot of times is, moving blocks around isn't always the purview of a site builder. This could be something that a content person does as well. And anytime you move a block, so let's just I'll move all of each of these, it doesn't actually change the block content, but it does change the block configuration. Because one of the parts of that block configuration is its weight. So if I move those around, hit save blocks, come over here and look at config sync, you're going to see that we've got some configuration that's been changed with exactly the four blocks that we messed with. And if we view the differences of any of those, you'll see that the weight for each of them has changed. So that qualifies as a config change, although it's not, it's not like you really mess with information architecture or a view, but it still counts as config. So if you're in the situation where your the content folks are adding blocks or placing blocks or removing blocks or changing the order of blocks or moving a block between different regions, well, then technically that should be done on the local environment and pushed up. Or if it's done on the production environment, then you have to have a process in place to have someone export that config and get it in your repo. And that can get in the way of things. That can be kind of a cumbersome thing if blocks are being moved around a lot. And I'm just using blocks as an example. So what I'm going to show you obviously is valid for any type of configuration. I use it a lot with page manager and panel stuff as well. So if you have a page manager based site or page, anytime you swap out a pane or a block in a panel, that's a configuration change. And that's clearly under the purview of like a content person. So that might be configuration you might want to ignore as well. So this is pretty straightforward to use. Let me do a config import real quick. I want to get rid of that change I just made. Right, so I'll do it from the UI. It's more to see because I want to get clean again. So let me just import these and undo that little change I did. So it's actually pretty simple to use. Under configuration synchronization, there's a new ignore page. And you can come in here and configuration entity names to ignore, and you can use wildcards. So it's bigger. We're just going to do block.star. Save configuration. Now that is a configuration change. So if we go back to the sync page, we did change our config ignore settings, and you're going to see that, it now added, our setting, but that one's fine. But now let's come over here. Let's change some block layout. And let's even add one to let's add one to this. No, let's see. Sidebar. There's only one sidebar, I guess. All right, well, let's add the who's, not show, type right. Oh, I guess we don't have the who's new. Let's see what do we got here. Well, it doesn't matter which one. I'll just put syndicate in the sidebar. This is all configuration. So now I'm gonna hit save. If I come over here, notice we only have one changed. And this configuration entity is ignored due to these settings and not displayed in the list above. I guess I did some stuff before. Yeah, let me redo these. I actually added the other one before I saved this. That's why that's not showing up. So let me move those around. So these are going to be ignored. This is the only one that we're going to see is changed. So if we come over here and now if we do our config export, the only thing that should be exported is going to be that config ignore.settings.yaml. Git status. Oh, look at why is that? Why are we lying? Oh, what did I not do? What did I miss? Oh, no, you know what it is? They do get exported. I don't believe they get imported. Yeah. They're ignored on import, not on export. Okay, phew, sorry about that. Forgot about that little thing. So let me do this. So git add config, git status, git commit, updated config for config ignore demo. All right, so now we're clean. We're clean. All right, so now if I come here, if I change something here, so let's put, let's change the order a little bit. So it's going to be PPSS. So just so we remember the order of highlighted, PPSS. All right, so now if I do a config import, that should not change because these are going to be ignored. There's not even an import button down there, but let's do it from drush. Dev drush cim-y config export, config import y. So nothing should be import here. Nothing should change. There are no changes to import. This probably isn't going to change. And this should not change either. This should be primary, secondary status. Primary parent, primary, secondary status. Yep. All right, so that's all it does. It basically, it ignores certain configurations on import. So if you want to give, a particular role the ability to tweak views on production, you can do that. I've used this in combination with config ignore. I'm sorry, config read only as well. But there's not a whole lot more to this. So I think I'm going to stop talking unless there's any questions. No? All right, I'm gonna stop the recording then.
Actually, I do have one question.
Oh, okay, hold on. Luckily I didn't stop the recording.
You
Let me
can
see.
go ahead and stop the recording if you want. Were you aware you still have the bear filter on during all of that?
I noticed that about 2/3 of the way through. Thank you.
Okay.